In Google Slides, there are quite a few options to make your own graphics, and this just saves time because you don't have to make them in other programs like Photoshop and then copy them in. And so for this, you can go to the actual shape tool, which is in the middle of the toolbar, and then you have a few options. The presets for arrows calls out equations. You're probably unlikely to use these as much. The arrow ones, maybe, but as you can probably tell, the main ones you'll probably be using are in the actual shape folder. And when it comes to making something like a rectangle, for example, what I found in experience to make it more visually appealing is you typically want to pick an actual rounded rectangle. That works in most cases. So I'm going to select that one and go ahead and make my shape. You'll notice that it's actually filled it in by default with light gray with this dark gray border. This is based on the actual theme, so you can go to your theme and you can change the way the colors are set by default, but I'm not going to look into it in this particular presentation. It's just going to be set by this and I can just change it manually. So with this one, I'm going to make an interesting style for this object to start with, and then I'll go for a more traditional design. And I'm going to change the fill. So this is the paint bucket fill color option up here. I'm going to make it transparent. And then for the outline, you can just go to this one here. I'm going to make it a sort of medium gray, just like this. And then I can go further to the right, and you have the border weight, which is essentially how thick the outline is. I'm going to go to about 4, so it's fairly chunky. And then what I'm going to do is just go to this option, and you can change the design of the actual line. So you don't have to have it a constant line design. You can have it so that it's something like this. It's dotted. And this is quite a cool thing you can do if you want to, say, highlight something in your presentation. You could put it over a collection of objects just so the audience knows that you're kind of grouping this up. That's what I typically use. And then you can maybe, for this case, put it down to about 3, a little bit thinner. And this is great to use for that. But for this one, I want to go for a more traditional design as well, so I'm going to change it up a bit more. I'm going to go back to my paint bucket, go for, say, a quite nice blue. I'll go for this one. And then obviously this does not look very good at all, so I'm going to go for my outline. And in my experience, when you make these simple colored shapes, you don't actually need an outline in most cases. So I can just go to the outline or border and go on transparent. And there we go. You'll notice that when I click it, you will always see this yellow diamond in the top left corner. This controls how rounded the edges are. So just like this. You can drag it all the way in, so it's kind of almost like an oval shape, and then you can bring it all the way out, so it's almost like a normal rectangle. But somewhere in between, so I guess the kind of default value is probably the best in most cases, but of course, it just depends on what you actually need. Incidentally, I'm going to make this a bit smaller, so you have a bit more room to work with. And when moving your actual shape around, Google Slides will give you a great guide on where it's positioned on the stage of the slide. So if I move this, you will see there's a little crosshair that says, okay, so you've moved this into the center. And if I move it down, it will give you a full crosshair to say, okay, this is the absolute middle of the slide. What's also good is with the shape selected, if I just type, it will actually type within the shape by default. So this means you don't have to manually create a text box and then paste this over. Every shape comes with its own inbuilt text box, which makes it so much easier to put writing in these. And then with this one, I'm going to just fiddle around with the actual text options. You get pretty much the same text options in most programs, as you can see here. So this stuff shouldn't really be too new. So I'm just going to make it aligned to the center, and then I'm just going to bump up the size quite a bit, and then let's go for about 40 and then make it bold. And that looks quite nice, although when you have text inside colored objects, you typically want to make the text white. That's how it typically looks best within a colored background, so that's good. What I should also say at this point is that if you change the size of the shape, it actually doesn't change the size of the text because the text is controlled separately. And so to demonstrate this, if I change this to, say, quite a small shape like this, you'll see that because the text has remained the same size, it's actually said, oh, we don't have enough room, so let's try to put the rest of the word on a separate line. So just keep in mind that if you have to drastically resize one of your shapes, also make sure to select the text and bump that down a few as well, just to make sure that it's within the alignment of it. And so, you know, I can just put this over here, I can do copy, paste, and I'm going to just put them in a row, and you'll notice something here. So I'm going to put this in here, And then if I paste again, what you'll see is when I try and line this up, you'll see something interesting happen. You see that blue guide at the bottom there. So Google Slides is really smart because what it does is it senses where the gaps are between previous shapes on the slide and actually tells you, oh, okay, so I'm following a pattern here. So let's make sure that this is the same distance apart as the original two shapes on the left. So that's super easy to do. And now I have completely uniform gaps in between all of these. And then if I wanted to make sure these were actually centered, what I would typically do is select all of them, right click. You can go on group, so it just groups them all together as one object. And then I would select them, and as you've seen before, it will give you the guide to say, okay, it's centered, but then go down here, and now it's fully centered because I have the full red crosshair. And so there we go. This is perfectly set up to go ahead and present once I put some more text on and different colors. So I can go ahead and ungroup this. Now that it's in the center, I could always group it up later. And then let's see, let's make some interesting colors for this. And then I'll just change the actual text and we're ready to go. So I hope you found this video useful. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, please leave them on the video. If you want to subscribe, that would be amazing. And I'll see you all in the next video.